In August of 1945, the United States drops the world's first deployed atomic bomb over the Japanese city of Hiroshima. 80,000 people are immediately obliterated, wiping out 90% of the city. Tens of thousands more later die of radiation exposure. Barely 4 years later, the Soviet Union detonates its first atom bomb, beating many expectations and shattering the image of American invincibility. But how did this happen? Was the design stolen from American nuclear secrets? Today on Espionage, we bring you the secrets of nuclear war. In 1943, America was at war. At Arlington Hall outside Washington, D.C., Army code breakers were trying to intercept enemy communications. One day they received a surprising order: start spying on America's ally, the Soviet Union. The immense depth and scope of this espionage was not completely known until after the Cold War ended, when archives began to open to scholars. When these historians examined the top-secret documents, they were startled. Deep inside the files were the names of U.S. government employees from World War II accused of being Soviet spies. But were the charges true? It took 3 more years for the world to learn the answer. That was when the U.S. revealed its own secret archives, including thousands of telegrams sent between Moscow and the Soviet diplomats in the 1940s and 50s. Wartime censorship had allowed the U.S. Army to receive copies of all international cables. The Soviets did not mind, since the cables were in code that they believed to be unbreakable. In an effort known as the Venona Project, code breakers began painstakingly sifting through tens of thousands of coded telegrams. Eventually, these messages revealed shocking evidence of Soviet espionage inside America's most secret location, Los Alamos, New Mexico. The U.S. Army chose this isolated setting to build its nuclear weapons laboratory in 1942. It wanted to keep the project secret, not only from America's enemies, but also from its ally, the Soviet Union. Some of the world's greatest scientists and engineers worked at Los Alamos. 3 Nobel Prize winners in nuclear physics, and the legendary Niels Bohr, father of atomic physics. But even for them, building a nuclear bomb was far from easy.
From the common type of uranium, U-238, we needed to extract a rare isotope, U-235. This was a difficult and expensive process, and plutonium was so radioactive that we needed to invent a new process we called implosion. We would make an atomic bomb by surrounding a lump of plutonium with a layer of explosive and detonating the explosives to compress the plutonium into what's called a critical mass.
Meanwhile, halfway across the globe, physicist Igor Kurchatov had been reading reports stolen from Los Alamos. He ordered Soviet scientists to start experiments on implosion immediately. Months later, the atom bomb was tested at Alamogordo, New Mexico. The principle of implosion worked. The entire time, Kurchatov was receiving secret reports that saved the Soviet nuclear program enormous amounts of time and money.
It probably helped the Soviet Union build a bomb 2 or 3 years before they would have otherwise managed to do so. Their first atomic bomb, they simply copied from the American atomic bomb, and espionage largely helped them to do that.
It wasn't long before the atomic spies were caught. Klaus Fuchs, a physicist who had refined the theory of implosion, was behind many of the Soviet reports. As the investigation continued, the Soviet Union tested an atom bomb, ending America's nuclear monopoly earlier than expected. How had this happened? The Soviet decoding project, given the meaningless cover name Venona, immediately took on immense importance.
All of a sudden, what had been a nice, quiet operation to identify a few low-level spies became the most important thing in the FBI.
Klaus Fuchs was arrested in England in February 1950 and sentenced to 14 years in prison. He admitted to giving the KGB a sketch of the plutonium bomb and detailed information on implosion. Fuchs identified Harry Gold as his KGB courier. Gold fit the description in the Soviet cables of a spy codenamed Gus. Gold identified David Greenglass as his other source at Los Alamos. Greenglass matched in the description of an atomic spy with the code name Caliber. Greenglass named his brother-in-law, Julius Rosenberg, as the KGB spy who'd recruited him. This was a crucial break for the FBI. Rosenberg matched perfectly a spy with two code names, Antenna and Liberal. He was working so hard as a spy, the KGB worried about his health.
Greenglass. He was an old colleague of mine at Los Alamos. He ended up serving 10 years in prison, and afterwards he changed his name and dropped out of sight. He was the main witness at the Rosenberg's trial, and he happened to be the brother of Ethel Rosenberg, who was eventually sent to the electric chair in 1953 for sharing secrets about the atomic bomb with the Soviets.
As Greenglass neared the age of 80, he finally decided to come out and break the silence. He agreed to an interview with 60 Minutes 2, where he admitted that his false testimony on the witness stand had cost his sister her life.
Greenglass, why do you think Julius and Ethel maintained their silence to the end?
One word. Stupidity. My sister is responsible for her own death.
You haven't seen the Rosenbergs' children since the trial. What would you say to them today?
I would say I'm sorry that their parents are dead.
Would you also apologize for your role in the execution?
No, I can't say that. It's not true. I had no idea that they were going to give them the death sentence.
Well, do you have a clean conscience?
I sleep very well.
Ultimately, the codebreakers found cover names for more than 300 Americans who spied for the Soviets in World War II.
American counterintelligence was able to identify only about 100 of these Soviet agents.
But even this incomplete list is remarkable. Harry Dexter White, Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, cover name Lawyer. Larry Dugan, Chief of the Division of American Republics at the State Department, cover name Prince. Lachlan Curry, Senior Administrative Assistant to President Roosevelt, cover name Page.
There was not a single agency of the American government that the Soviets had not infiltrated, ranging from the OSS, the forerunner of the CIA, to the Justice Department, to the Treasury Department, to the State Department, to all of the wartime defense agencies.
Ironically, there is no evidence that Senator Joseph McCarthy, who smeared hundreds of innocent people as Soviet spies, ever heard of the Venona Project.
If McCarthy had learned about a code-breaking operation that named Soviet spies in the morning, he would have been holding a press conference announcing it that afternoon. But as far as we can tell, of all the people that McCarthy named as possible Soviet agents, only a tiny handful, perhaps 2 or 3, are revealed in Venona. You would have thought that there were so many people that if you threw a dart, you'd hit more real spies by chance.
The Venona Project lasted until 1980. Only certain messages could be read, less than 1% of the total. In any case, no messages sent after 1948 could be broken. That's because the codebreakers had been betrayed by one of their own.
Beginning in 1948, in over a 6-month period, all of the Soviet cryptographic systems went dark, and the United States no longer could read any encrypted Soviet traffic. We know that the Soviets were tipped by Bill Weissman, a linguist at Los Alamos, who watched his first KGB message decoded by the Americans right before his eyes. Many of us consider this the greatest intelligent loss in U.S. history.
Weisband was questioned by the FBI in 1950 and jailed for contempt of court. To protect the secrecy of Venona, he was never charged with espionage. So the ultimate irony of Venona is that the KGB knew about it almost from the start, and the FBI, once they'd uncovered Weisband, knew that the KGB knew.
I know an FBI agent who said to the head of the NSA, "Who are you keeping it secret from? You're not keeping it secret from the KGB, you're keeping it secret from the American public." It's really unfortunate that Venona was not made public much earlier. Certainly, for the last 30 years or so, we've had fierce debates about McCarthyism, for example. The extent of the Soviet danger, I think, would have been a lot clearer had Venona been made public. I think a lot of the bitterness and rancor in American political life might have been avoided had we known the truth.
Beyond its revelations, Venona raises important questions about the value and the danger of secrecy in a democratic society. But fundamentally and undeniably, it was a triumph of code breaking seldom equaled or surpassed.